The main Neutron channel strip plugin packs a lot of features into a relatively small footprint. Before looking at the individual processors, let's take a look at the overall layout of the plugin. You could break up the Neutron channel strip into 4 distinct sections. At the top, you'll find the preset menu, along with access to the undo list, the options window, and the help. There's also a field for naming the particular instance. This is used by one of the plugin's intelligent analysis and display features. And the Track Assistant button enables another automatic intelligent processing feature. I'll cover all of that later in the course. Just below is an area showing the 5 processor slots for the 4 main processors: EQ, compressor, transient shaper, and exciter. Remember, compressor is doubled up. Here, you can enable and disable each one with the power button, and call up individual presets specifically for that processor type. The slider is a mix control for dry and processed signals. To the left is dry, to the right processed. This allows for convenient parallel processing on a module-by-module basis, especially useful for the compressors. An easily overlooked feature is that you can drag the modules to reorder them. This is possible even after the Track Assistant has arranged them in a particular order. Remember, you can always change or override any of the plugin's automatic mixing choices. Below that is the main work area, where the currently selected modules' displays and controls are accessed. I'll cover all the details as I go through each of the processors in the next several videos. On the right is the output section. Most of this area is taken up with the input and output level meters. These should be familiar to any users of iZotope's other products like Ozone. They show both average and peak levels, along with numerical indications of these levels just below. This section is also where you access the final output limiter, where you can choose among several of iZotope's well-respected limiter algorithms. At the bottom of this area are controls for the built-in neutrino spectral shaping processor. This is the same functionality as the free standalone neutrino plugin included here as part of the Neutron channel strip. Again, I'll cover all these features in detail later in the appropriate videos. Above the meters are 2 buttons. If zero latency is activated, Neutron will run without introducing any plugin latency, but this will disable the neutrino functionality and change a few other settings. The DAW should compensate for any plugin latency anyway, so there's really no need to enable zero latency in most cases, at least for music mixes. There are a few settings in the options window that are worth taking a brief look at. In the General tab, if True Bypass is enabled, then whenever a module is bypassed, it'll stop adding latency and release its CPU overhead. You can turn off the rollover pop-up tooltips, but unlike some implementations, these work on enough of a delay that they're not intrusive, and they can be helpful, so you might as well leave them on. Finally, there are a couple of important settings that relate to the Track Assistant, but I'll explain them when I cover that feature towards the end of the course. There are also several global metering options. For the input and output meters, RMS plus peak is the default, but for post-production applications, you can change that to short-term plus peak, which gives a readout that relates to modern broadcasting standards requirements for audio. For the spectrum curves seen dancing in most processor displays, you can alter the ballistics. Slowing them down from the default real-time setting can provide an easier-to-follow readout of the frequency balance, which may be useful for modules that alter that balance, which is most of them, since they're all optionally multiband processors. You can also view the spectrum in third octave and other displays. Each of the individual main modules has its own preferences. For most of them, it's an option as to the type of crossover employed when the processor is run in multiband mode. The more transparent but latency-inducing choice versus the zero latency but possibly more colored option. The EQ has a few other settings, which I'll cover in the next video. And on that note, let's move on to a look at each of the individual processors, starting with the EQ.